Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, peace be unto you. This is the first chapter of Samuel, the first book of Samuel, but we are going with the original name. Moving forward, it is actually historically called the first book of the Kingdoms, chapter 1. There are 28 verses in this chapter. We're not going to go over the insignificant differences or differences that are not significant, that are not major, that are not doctrinal. So we're going to skip over a lot of the verses. We're actually going to start in we're going to look at verse 1. So minor difference here, just to clarify, it says Nasib Ephraim. So this is a place, but in the Masoretic it says here son of Zuf. So this is a person. So that is an interesting difference. I want to point that one out. We see here in verse 3, it says Eli or Eli. Eli was there. Eli and his two sons, Ophni and Phinehas. So Eli was present in the Septuagint. However, in the Masoretic, it seems that Eli was not there. It's only his two sons. Okay, next. Verse 5, you have an omission in regards to why Elkanah gave Hannah a portion, a prime portion. Because it says here she had no child. There's the rationale that was omitted. So that is the reason he gave her that, because she had no child. Okay, maybe as to comfort her. I don't know the rationale, but the specific rationale besides having no child, why he did that, but it shows his heart. Okay, and actually, I want to point out, it doesn't just say that because she had no child. It actually says, for he loved Hannah. It says, only Elkanah loved Hannah more. So, the rationale in the Masoretic as to why he gave her a worthy portion is because he loved Hannah. Not only because he loved her. In the Septuagint, it says because she had no child. But that's actually not used as a point. That's not used as a supporting point as to why he gave her the portion in the Masoretic, or in the Septuagint, rather. In verse 6, we have our first significant difference in the book. In the first book of the Kingdoms, it says here, and according to the despondency of her affliction. Okay, so Adonai gave her no child, and according to the despondency of her affliction, she was dispirited on this account. So she was discouraged by the affliction of Adonai, which was specifically her being barren, versus her adversary also provoked her sore to make her fret. So the difference here is she is discouraged, again, by her barrenness, not barrenness, but by the fact of her being barren, which was an affliction of Adonai, versus her enemy, which is Phinehas, provoking her. So we can see that is quite a difference. There's this rivalry going on in the Masoretic, whereas in the Septuagint there is no inkling that there is a rivalry, or that at least Phinehas is not provoking her very, in the bugging kind of way, or an affliction kind of way. She's provoking her clearly in the Masoretic, but that is nowhere in the Septuagint. Okay, in verse 7, we have another significant difference. It says, she did year by year. going up to the house of Adonai. So what did she do? So she did. She did go up. So that's what she did. She did go up to the house of Adonai. So that's what she did, she being Hannah. In the Masoretic, it's as he did, so year by year. So this seems to be Adonai, perhaps, keeping her womb shut when she went up to the house. So it kind of makes no sense. Why would he? It's like he's actively keeping her womb shut year by year when she went up. It's like it's determinant. It hinges on her going to the house of Adonai, and that's when she would have her womb shut. That doesn't seem to make sense, but it does make more sense in the Septuagint that she did this year by year. What? Going up to the house of Adonai. Okay, so moving on. Verse 8, significant difference again. There's an omission of here am I, my Lord, which is a Hebrew expression, here am I, when someone calls you. And you can see Elkanah calling Hannah, calling her name. She said to him, here am I, my Lord. And then he said to her, what ails you that you weep? So there's an omission of here am I. So we can see that she is verbal. She's not simply crying and not responding. So that's why I say this is a significant difference for one reason. And then the second one is, it says here, what ails thee? That is also omitted. And then that you weep, and why do you not eat? Okay, and related, that's connected to the what ails you. There's another omission in the same verse. Why does your heart smite you? Versus grieved. Why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 children versus sons? Verse 9, another significant difference. They keep going. And stood before Adonai. Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shelah and stood before Adonai. Verses after they had drunk. Okay, so there's no mention of standing up or even before Adonai. Okay. Threshold. It says here, Eli the priest was on a seat by the threshold of the temple of Adonai. So there's a seat by the doorway versus by the post. Okay. Verse 10, significant difference. You just keep mounting up. Grieved in spirit. Hannah was very grieved in spirit versus she was in bitterness of soul. So why is that a significant difference, you may ask? Well, being grieved in spirit is depressed. It's being sad. Okay, you're grieved. Think of someone mourning for the bereaved, for example. They're grieved in their heart and their spirit. Someone who's bitter in their soul, people think of Job. They think of someone who is jaded, who is cynical. It's a negative quality to be bitter. But to be grieved in spirit means you're humbled. It's not a negative quality. It's actually a positive quality. It leads to, besides being humble, it leads to repentance, for one. It leads to drawing closer to Adonai. And then it says here, dedicate him, in verse 11, humiliation versus affliction. Then it says, dedicate him. I will indeed dedicate him, her son. If she's given a son, he will be dedicated to you. Versus, it doesn't say dedicate, it says, I will give him to you. So what does that mean? Give him to you. It can mean so many different things, but dedicating him means he's set apart. He's dedicated to the work of Adonai. But giving him to Adonai can have so many connotations and can be erroneously interpreted as being sacrificed, for example, as we saw in a previous book. I believe that was it wasn't Ruth, it was Judges, where the father made an oath and said, whatever walks through the door, I'm going to sacrifice. It's going to be a burnt offering. So it's kind of similar in that language to in terms of people saying give him. So is he going to be a burnt offering? No, we know in both instances they were both dedicated. The daughter of the individual in Judges, I forgot his name right now, pardon, and then the potential son of Hannah. And then it says here in the same verse, there is an omission of, and he shall drink no wine nor strong drink. So that was omitted, meaning perhaps there's they could say, hey, this is technicality. Okay, he's going to be a child who's going to grow up and will not have a razor come upon his head, but because it's not stipulated here, they could say, well, he's allowed to drink wine or strong drink, perhaps. Not so. There's no leeway in the Septuagint. It is just hard and fast. He's going to be keeping the Nazirite vow. In verse 12, it says, long, she was long praying, versus she continued. So we can see the duration of her prayer was long, versus no details given. She just continued. We don't know if it was for a long time or not. In verse 14, we have our first big difference in the book. It says here, the servant of Eli said to her. Okay, so pardon the background noise. I'm just going to push through it. The servant of Eli, or the servant, was omitted. So does it still make sense if you omit servant? Let me just mute for a moment. So it says here, I didn't pause the recording. Sorry. Should have paused the recording. Pardon. I'm going to have to do a timestamp there. So it says the servant of Eli said to her. So it seems Eli is a servant that is either expressing Eli's concerns or expressing his own concerns. How long will you be drunken? And then it says here, and go out, take away your wine from you, and then this is omitted, go out from the presence of Adonai. So she's in the presence of Adonai, and his servant, Eli's servant, is saying, get out from the presence. So Eli seems to be, that is the priest. So the priest's assistant, servant of the priest, is saying, this is not proper. Go out from the presence of Adonai because you're drunk. How long are you going to be drunk? Okay, so we see a hierarchy here, and he's trying to maintain some form of decorum, some form of holiness, perhaps. This is a big misunderstanding because in the next verse, in 15, Hannah answered and said, no, my Adon, to the servant of Eli. I live in a hard day, versus I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. So it's not too far away. They're both having difficulties. Hard day, sorrowful spirit. And then it says here, verse 16, pestilent, count not your handmaid for a pestilent woman, which means troublesome or harmful. So I'm not a troublesome woman. I'm not trying to do harm. Versus a daughter of Belial. And then it says here in the second half, for by reason of the abundance of my importunity, which means persistence, because of my persistence, and I have a lot of persistence, I have continued my prayer until now, versus out of the abundance of my complaint and grief. So I'm a big complainer. I whine a lot, and I'm grieving. This is why I've spoken here too. So is it a speech, or is this a prayer? Well, it says she was long praying. It's not a speech, although this was not even the original text. That is a insertion by the translators. Okay, in verse 18, we have a lot of things to point out. This is quite a long video, so I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm going to apologize for the pause that I took. It says here, she has already found favor in Eli's eyes. This is an addition of let. So let your handmaid find grace in the Masoretic. Whereas no, she already has found favor. She doesn't have to ask for it. She doesn't have to ask Eli for that. She states, I have found favor in your eyes. Okay? Because of his favorable answer, go in peace. The Elohim of Israel give you all your petition, which you have asked of him. There's another omission of, and entered into her lodging. So she didn't just go her way and go into some, wander off somewhere and get lost. No, she actually went into her house. And what did she do? She ate and drank with her husband. She didn't just eat. She didn't just go for a bite at fast food or, falafel or something. She didn't just go to the streets eating falafel. No, she actually went to her home and she had a meal with her husband, eating and drinking, not just eating. So she was well hydrated. It's important to drink. And verse 19, we have another significant difference. It says here, his house. Elkanah and Hannah went into his house, Elkanah's house, which is located at Armathaim. Okay, not their house. She doesn't own this house. He does. It belongs to him, or perhaps his household, the house of his fathers, perhaps, but does not belong to her. So there's a distinction between the husband's house and the wife's house. Okay. The same verse, 19. There's an omission of, and she conceived. So it says here, and Adonai remembered her. Okay, so what did he do? Nothing. In the Septuagint, he remembered her and he did something. This is how he remembered her. She conceived. Okay, so there is now life in her womb. Verse 21 says, significant difference. It says here, in Shelah, the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer in Shelah, versus unto Yah. So it is an offering to Yah. That's kind of a given, but it does specify where it was, Shelah. And then it says the yearly sacrifice was given. And his vows, versus vows. He had multiple vows. And there's an omission of, and all the tithes of his land. Why is that important? Because the land tithe is the tithe of his first fruits. So he did do tithing. because back then it was an agricultural society, and he could do that. And that tithe was for who? It was for the priests, for the Levites. There were Levites back then, and yes, that was to them. It was an offering to Adonai, but it was also for the Levites for their nourishment. That's their supply of food, the tithe. It's not monetary, not saying you can't give money as a tithe, but it is specifically for the Levites, and you can't remove that association. And I'm not going to use that to justify me asking for a tithe, because I really, not that I can't, but it's not, I'm not going to use the Bible to justify people donating money and saying I'm a Levite when I'm in fact not. Okay, so verse 22. There's an omission of until the child goes up. I will not go up. It says, Hannah did not go up with him, for she said to her husband, so she did not go up to Shelah with Elkanah to give the offering. Why? Because she is waiting for the child until the child goes up, when I have weaned him, and he shall be presented before Adonai, and he shall abide there continually. So that is her reasoning. Her timing is, I'm waiting for this moment after he's weaned, or when he's weaned, and he'll be presented, dedicated. All right. Okay, pardon the noise. I don't know, this is a challenge. Please forgive me for the noise in the background. I'm trying to record. So she wants to go up until her child is weaned, and then until the child goes up. So she wants to be accompanied by her son. Okay, how old were kids weaned back then? I've read different sources. It seems to be like 2 years old, 3 years old. I know it seems unusual, but that was how it was done in ancient times. They were nursed, they were breastfed until they were older, even up to 2, 3 in some cases. So this child could walk. He could literally go up. You don't have to carry him. You could grab the child by the hand, and he will walk with you up to Shelah. Okay, he can physically walk. So I just want to point that out, because that's important too. Because people would reason, oh, this is when she weans him, he's probably 1, you can't walk yet. No, he's walking. So when I have weaned him, he will go up. So until the child goes up. So he can literally go up. He can literally walk. And then it says here, continually he shall abide there. Her son will abide there continually versus forever. So no, he's not going to be there eternally. He's going to be there continually until the day of his death. Not forever and ever. Amen. Verse 23. Significant difference says, may Adonai establish that which comes out of your mouth. Versus, only Adonai establish his word. So you notice I'm not using the name anymore. It's out of respect of the name and out of the respect for Adonai. If you want to use a name, it's up to you. I'm just not going to do that unless it's really explicit, But I'm just saying Adonai moving forward. But may Adonai establish that which comes out of your mouth. So whatever comes out of the mouth of Hannah, let Adonai establish it, versus only Adonai establish his word. So Hannah is removed from the picture. He's going to establish what he wants, his word. No, we can see there's a collaboration happening here. Do what is good in your eyes. Abide still until you shall have weaned him. But may Adonai establish that which comes out of your mouth, which she had stated here, that she will not go up until he's been weaned. Okay? And it seemed that it came to pass, because it says here, the following portion of the verse, the woman tarried and suckled her son until she had weaned him. So there were no detractions. There were nothing to prevent her from what she had said. Things went smoothly, so to speak, or according to her plans, or according to what she said, because Adonai, or at least Elkanah, said, "May Adonai establish that." So there was the goodwill there. Him giving the authority, so to speak. He's placing his approval, not authority, his approval upon those words, and he's asking for the approval of Adonai as well. Verse 24, big difference. It says, with a calf of 3 years old, she went up with him to Shelah. With what? A calf, one calf of 3 years old. Okay, why is it a big difference? Because in the Masoretic, she didn't bring one calf of 3 years old. She brought 3 bullocks. How did she bring 3 bullocks all by herself? Logistically, that's not easy to tie 3 bullocks together and pull them with her. But if it is a calf of 3 years old, it's still a large animal, but it is only one. More manageable to bring one calf versus 3 bullocks. And then we have an omission of fine flour. It's a minor omission, but it's fine. It's not just any flour. And the child with them. She entered to the house of Adonai, and the child with them. So the child was with both the mother, Hannah, and Elkanah. I think Elkanah was there, because it says them. Doesn't make sense otherwise. Versus the child was young, so the child was not necessarily with them, so perhaps did not fulfill her words that he would come up with her to Shelah. But no, we can see in the Septuagint, her words were fulfilled, and she fulfilled what she had spoken of. She's a woman of her word. She brought her child as she had said, and Adonai allowed this to come to pass. Verse 25, so specific roles are identified in verse 25. We can see Elkanah is the one who is doing the offering. So yes, he was there. That confirms my suspicions. Where are them? Where are they? Elkanah and Hannah, not just Hannah. So the father killed the offering, which was the one calf of 3 years old. Otherwise, he's going to have to kill 3 bullocks. But why would they kill 1 bullock out of 3 and leave 2 to remain? Doesn't make sense. You don't bring 3 and only sacrifice 1. Are you saving 1? Are you donating the 2? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. Just leave it at that. Doesn't make sense. Okay. So the roles identified are Elkanah is doing the offering. He's doing the slaying of the calf. And Hannah has her role, which is bringing the child to Eli, or Eli, the priest. And then it says here, and they brought him before Adonai, and his father slew his offering, which he offered from year to Adonai. And he brought near the child and slew the calf. And Hannah, the mother of the child, brought him to Eli. Okay. There's a continuous difference of calf versus bullock. I think they're pretty similar, though. Similar terms. Verse 26, I pray you. So she's pleading, I pray you, my Adon. Versus, oh my Adon. Oh my Adon. That can be an expression of exasperation, but here, Septuagint, it is clear she's pleading. It's like a prayer. She's pleading with her Adon, who is Eli in this case. Okay, verse 28, the last verse, it says here, and she said, and the text is cut off. It continues, her statement continues in the next verse, which is the next chapter. A verse is an addition of, and he worshipped Adonai there. Okay, Who's he? It doesn't say. Who's he worshipped? Is this the child worshipping or is this Eli worshipping? Hard to say. But that was an addition. No one worshipped Adonai there, at least in this verse, in this context. There was no worshipping being done in this specific verse 28. They're simply having a conversation. So we're going to continue on in chapter 2 of the first book of Samuel, aka more historically correct title, the first book of the Kingdoms, chapter 1. So thank you, ladies and gents, once again. Till next time, we'll look at the second chapter of the first book of the Kingdoms, aka 1 Samuel, chapter 2. I bid you all Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, and peace be unto you. Maranatha. Sorry for all the background noise.